I know. I know. I am the worst person in the world, and I cannot apologise enough for my disgustingly long absence. I'm not going to make excuses. Life has just been a lot, and unfortunately that's meant that for a little while I've had to prioritise, and unfortunately YouTube just couldn't be at the top of that list. So I'm sorry, but I have a piece of information that I'm hoping is going to make you hate me a little bit less. I'm competing again. I'm going to be getting back on the platform in, as of this week, 12 weeks time, and I am so nervous, but I'm also so excited. And so I thought, what better way to make a proper comeback with my vlogs and just getting myself out there a little bit more than doing another comp prep series. So welcome back, and I hope that you haven't missed me too much. But I'm well aware that obviously the first thing that we need to do is have a catch up, because it's been a long time, and I posted a massively long video talking about my injury and just a bit of a life dump, because I've had a really shit time in the past like 18 months. It's not been good, it's not been fun. So let's have a sit down and let's have a chat. I'm going to meet my friend for lunch, but I've got some time and I really wanted to film this. So initially the injury happened in October of 2022. So coming up on a year now. We rebuilt a little bit and then it happened again in the January. But since, I'm going to say April, is when I actually started squatting and deadlifting again. So literally October to December, January, I was squatting and deadlifting, but not to any kind of crazy standard whatsoever. It was just ticking the box of the movement pattern, building my confidence again before we tried to push it. I got to an okay point, but obviously then my injury stopped that from happening, and we just decided the best thing to do was to remove both of them completely. So essentially from January to April, I was benching. I was still benching 4 times a week, so that has kept a really nice level. And for me, bench is the one that if I take too long of a break, it shows, and it takes me a long time to kind of rebuild that. So essentially we kept in, I'm basically just prefacing the really long video. If you want a more detailed explanation, then obviously please go and watch that. But we kept in certain movement patterns. So we kept in like goblet squats. Eventually we introduced a leg press, and then a really big milestone was at the point where I could do a hinge movement again. So introducing, I think we had single leg RDLs, and then towards the back end of it, I had barbell RDLs. So really trying to focus on loading. And essentially the aim through that entire time was A, trying to get me to trust my body again, B, actually rebuilding my relationship with my glutes, my hamstrings, because they showed themselves to be weaker areas than we maybe had realised. And the third point was obviously then keeping an element of the movement patterns just for the sake of my CNS. So yes, and hip strength, basically just looking after that area, making sure that it was nice and strong. You're right by a window. I've just realised, maybe you, hang on. Sorry, I've literally just had to shut my window because I realised that the sound on that was probably awful, so that's fun. So come about April time, we dipped our toe in the water. We started off with just back squats, and that was not fun. Mentally, that took me probably longer than deadlifts did to kind of trust myself again with. And the hardest part coming back from an injury, as anyone who's been injured will know, is the mindset. And so a lot of it was just trying not to do things that were in my head going to avoid recreating pain, but actually in practice are things that would likely cause the pain. So essentially with things like deadlifts, for example, it made sense to me to rush more into an upright position, but actually that was something that was placing a lot more stress on my back. Whereas if we stayed with the initial position, for example, you're going to get much more pressure through the legs and you're in a way more optimal position. So it was just like unlearning a lot of habits that I'd built from the October to January time where I was injured, but we were still trying to do things and trying not to jump straight back into that place, actually just starting from a new baseline with those mechanics, which was so difficult. So we were just doing squats, I'm going to say for about 6 to 8 weeks, and then we just literally introduced, like, you've got 10 sets to build to like an RPE5 deadlift. And I remember on my week 1, I built up to 70 kilos and I was over the moon. and like my first 100 kilo squat back was a massive milestone. Same with my first 100 kilo deadlift. I think within the space of 9 weeks of deadlifting again, I went from 70 to 120 kilos. This is all like without a belt as well, so really learning to brace like my life depended on it, and really practicing all of those basics again. It's literally just been relearning. So where are we at now? So since I'm going to say about July, I was at a point where there was no regressions, there was no tweaks, changes, any like essence of you've just been injured in my programming. That was like the first time where everything was somewhat back to normal. And so since then, it's just been about building. So for about 3 months now, I've been squatting and deadlifting twice a week. I'm still benching 4 times a week, 1 primary day for each of those, and then secondary variation work for the rest of them. We've built in more glute work, so my body is now able to maintain a higher standard and a higher volume, higher exposure to all of those things, which is incredibly exciting. And about a month ago, I'd been asked a few times about like when I was going to get back on the platform, and I had in my head 2024, because I just want, now that things are back to normal, I want a solid like 6 months of building, because in my head, if I'm going to go back to the platform, I don't want to just get back to where I was, because even that, to be fair, in and of itself as a goal is a huge milestone to have gone through everything that we went through, basically 2 injuries, and for me personally, all of the mental shit that came off the back of that. That is a massive win. So it's not something I'm going to gloss over, but I personally just am who I am, and so I wanted something to show for that time. So I at least wanted to do a little bit better than my previous comp, given that by the time that I would have competed, let's say it was 2024, like a good 18 months plus since my last competition, which by the way is crazy. But yeah, so that was kind of on the cards anyway. And then I saw a competition come up in December, and it's an incredibly fun one. It's really well known for being really well run, and being a little bit more of a hype competition than just your local regional comp. So I was like, well, let's just apply and see if I get in, because it usually sells out like that. And I got in, and I spoke to my coach about it before, and I was like, look, this is kind of on my radar, what do you think? And he was so like, go for it, because for me, it's just about dusting off the cobwebs, and I think actually now we're back to normal, having something to work towards is just going to keep my mindset that much more straight and get me into, my coach said the word arrogant. You need to become an arrogant lifter, because I would question everything. The difference of like 2.5 kilos on a squat and deadlift, which we know in context isn't really that much, and it's not a huge jump to make at all, but that would psych me out. And so actually having something to work for, where we're bringing up the baseline, we're pushing what I'm capable of already. I'm like a month after that decision has helped me so much. So yes, basically we are 12 weeks out as of this week. I'm going to be competing the weekend of the 15th of December. And we are back to normal. So I'm going to take you through what training looks like at the moment, and it's going to be a very different prep to the last one, because I started working with my coach 10 weeks out from my last competition. I've obviously now been working with him practically that entire time. Ever since. So essentially we pushed right until the week of comp last time. This time we're definitely going to have a taper week, and of course the entry point looks very different. So in terms of my training, just to put things into perspective, I've actually just been away for 10 days, but the last training block we ended on a 120 squat, which for me was a huge jump. That was a 10 kilo jump from the most I had lifted in nearly a year. I ended on a new 1 rep max of 67.5 on bench, which I was relatively chuffed with. I kind of wanted 70 on the day, but I'm not going to complain, because that was the first time I'd ever touched that weight, and I was so nervous. Any of you guys that follow me on Instagram will have seen the reel that I posted, and I was literally like this the whole time. My coach was doing the handout like, oh my god. So that's something that's also going to determine the type of protocol that we put in place for that comp prep, because I freak out with new numbers on bench. Less so weirdly with squats and deadlifts, even though I've got that trigger in my mind with injury, but that's going to be something that will change. hopefully just having higher exposure to higher RPEs more regularly, just to stop myself psyching myself out so much there. So yes, we ended on a 120 squat, a 67.5 bench, comp single, and I think the heaviest pull that I did for deadlifts, I want to say was 132, but very comfortably, and I did a 130 double, which is a match PB for me. We had a week where I was supposed to pull a 140, but on the day it just didn't happen. Again, was a bit of a mental game and lots of other different variables, but that was quite a while ago now actually. So it's kind of just taking that, which for me mentally is a baseline I'm not angry about, and now we've got a full 12 weeks to build, and you guys see and will have seen if you watched my last series how much that can change and how quickly that can change. So I'm very ready to embrace the process. But yes, I'm not going to do too much detail about training this week because I'm literally just getting myself into the new block, but I wanted to start my series by just getting it out there, letting you guys know what's happening, giving you a little bit of context as to what the last few months has looked like, and again, just apologising for my disgusting absence because that's not okay. But I'm back and I'm very ready to document all of this, and I think you'll probably see some changes in like my mentality, my attitude, certainly like protocols, as I say, that we're building into the comp prep within my programming. So yeah, everything, I'm probably going to try and break it down. This is all preemptive. I don't know if I'm actually going to include this. We'll see where we're at. But last prep, I obviously did a whole vlog for 1 week at a time because I want to give you guys that little bit more detail. I've been focused much more on my nutrition this time. Externals, I'm much more settled into routine. There was a lot going on last time that kind of made that quite difficult. The likelihood is I'm probably going to split it into two, include a couple of training sessions in each, but just give you a little bit more of a vloggy context as to what life looks like as well behind the scenes. So yes, I'm very excited to take you guys along with me. Of course, if you're interested in following the journey, please make sure that you like this video, subscribe. But yes, I can't wait. 12 weeks out, let's build.